Commander Zekthara stood 8 feet tall, his obsidian carapace gleaming under the harsh lights of the orbital station's medical bay. For 3 decades, his father, Warlord Vexithera the Conqueror, had terrorized 17 star systems with methodical brutality. Planets surrendered at the mere mention of the Thara name. Fleets scattered like cosmic dust before their crimson warships. Children across the galaxy whispered fearful prayers to ward off the coming darkness. Now, as Zekithara gazed down at the small human lying unconscious on the biobed, he wondered if his father's legacy would die with him. The human, barely 5.5 feet tall and alarmingly fragile-looking, had been found drifting in, an escape pod near the Kepler Nebula. Standard protocol demanded immediate interrogation, followed by execution or enslavement. But something about the creature's peaceful expression as it slept stayed Zekthara's hand. When the human finally awoke, the first words out of its mouth were not pleas for mercy or offers of valuable intelligence. Instead, it looked directly at Zekthara's scarred face and said, "Wow, your shell is beautiful. Is that natural coloring or ceremonial paint?" Zekthara's 3 hearts skipped in unison. In 30 years of existence, no being had ever called any part of him beautiful. His father's genetic modifications had made him a perfect weapon, faster, stronger, more terrifying than any natural Thara. But beautiful? Never. "I am Commander Zekthara," he had responded, testing whether the name would spark recognition and fear. The human smiled, an expression that involved baring teeth which should have been threatening but somehow wasn't. "I'm Maya Chen, xenoarchaeologist. Nice to meet you, Zek. Mind if I call you Zek?" No one had ever shortened his name before. No one had ever asked permission to do so either. That first conversation lasted 7 hours. Maya spoke of ancient civilizations, of art carved into asteroids by species long extinct, of the beauty she found in the ruins of war. She asked endless questions about Thara culture, history, philosophy, subjects that Zekthara realized he knew almost nothing about beyond conquest and domination. "Your people must have incredible stories," Maya had said, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Warriors always do. Not just the battles, but the songs, the ceremonies, the way you honor your ancestors." Zekthara found himself admitting that he knew none of those things. His education had focused solely on warfare, strategy, and intimidation. He had never heard a Thara lullaby or learned the traditional dances his grandmother had once performed. "That's so sad," Maya had said simply without judgment. "Would you like to learn them together?" 3 months later, the galaxy watched in bewilderment as reports trickled in from across Thara space. The Conqueror's heir was studying. He had established a cultural preservation initiative, sending scholars to document Thara traditions that had been nearly lost to centuries of militarization. He was learning to play the Zareth, a traditional Thara string instrument that hadn't been heard in imperial courts for 50 years, and beside him always was the small human who had somehow convinced the galaxy's most feared warrior to take up archaeology. Maya had a gift for seeing beauty in destruction and potential in ruins. When she looked at the bombed-out remains of the Altarian Cultural Center, destroyed by Vexithara's forces a decade earlier, she didn't see a symbol of conquest. She saw an opportunity. "We could rebuild it," she told Zekthara as they stood in the rubble. "Not just the building, but make it a hub for cultural exchange. Imagine, art from every species your father conquered displayed together, their stories preserved, their voices heard." Zekthara's advisors called it madness. His father's old generals whispered of weakness and disgrace. But Maya had taught him that strength could be measured in ways beyond body count and fear. The first time Zekthara publicly performed a traditional Thara mourning song, dedicated to all those lost in his father's wars, the galaxy held its breath. His voice, genetically modified to project terror across battlefields, carried notes of such pure grief and beauty that even hardened war correspondents found themselves weeping. The second time, when he invited artists from former enemy worlds to perform alongside him, 3 systems formally requested to join the Thera Collective voluntarily, the first peaceful expansions in Thera history. Word reached Warlord Vexithera in his fortress at the galaxy's edge. His son had gone soft, infected by human weakness. The old warlord began mobilizing his personal fleet for one final campaign, to reclaim his empire from sentiment and restore proper order. But when Vexithera's warships dropped out of hyperspace above the capital world, they found something unprecedented. A combined fleet of 17 species, standing together not in fear, but in protection of something they had learned to value. Maya stood beside Vexithera on the bridge of the flagship, her hand resting gently on his armored forearm. She wasn't afraid of the approaching dreadnoughts. She had spent months learning about Vexithera through his son's memories, understanding the pain that had driven him to become a monster. "He's not evil," she had told Vexithera. "He's broken, and broken things can be mended if someone cares enough to try." When Vexithera's image appeared on the communication screen, ancient, scarred, radiating cold fury, Maya stepped forward. "Hello, sir," she said respectfully. "I've heard so many stories about you. Your son has told me about the time you held him through a fever when he was small and sang him the old songs. I was wondering, would you teach them to me too?" The galaxy's most feared warlord stared at the tiny human for a long moment. Then, incredibly, his shoulders began to shake. Whether with rage or something else entirely, no one could say, but his ships powered down their weapons. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from conquest, but from the simple act of seeing someone, truly seeing them, and choosing to love them anyway. The galaxy learned that day that humans possessed a weapon more powerful than any dreadnought, the ability to find the person hidden beneath the monster, and to refuse to give up on them. And in the years that followed, when children across 17 systems told stories before bed, they spoke not of warlords and terror, but of Maya the bridge builder, and how one human's friendship changed the galaxy forever.